If you don't mind who just came in, there's cards on the table to fill out, so just so we know that you were here. Thank you very much.
Yep.
If you want to open the windows over there, you're more than welcome to, or if this is too much, let me know.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Entertain a motion to open.
Make a motion.
I'll second. Sorry, David. Definitely have a quorum. Thanks for everybody showing up tonight. Appreciate that. Visitor cards are going around. All's here. All right. In front of you, you should have a package for, how do you say that? DeLuca. That's our first item that we'll be discussing tonight. Just take a few minutes to look at that. Is he here?
Oh, I'm sorry, we were talking about the cards.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm Chris DeLuca. Do I need to come to the front here? Or?
Yeah, no, I just didn't know who he was, so thank you for identifying. Yes, please do.
I'm Jen, you've been dealing with me.
Oh, yeah, how you doing? Mm-hmm.
Hold the chairs now. Relax.
Okay. Well, I'm used to actually standing on the podium, that's why this is fine.
Makes it easier, eye level here.
Yeah, okay.
Just give the folks a chance to look at the paperwork a little bit, then I'd like to have you present what you want to do.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's the first time they've ever seen it. Thank you. All right, if I may let him do his presentation. Everybody ready for that one? Okay. Please, I'd like to have you explain what you'd like to do.
Okay, well, should I start? When I originally had spoke to the building inspector, or I believe you guys call him the code enforcement officer, about, I guess, how we got to this point, does that make relevance here?
The part that really affects us, our portion of this is the moving the building from where it was to where you want it to be. That's where we come into it. That's our piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
The expansion of it is strictly code enforcement. So we're just involved in the relocating it.
That was the one step that I was never told of. I mean, I went over this with him on every step of the way of what I needed to do, met with him, went over all of it. Basically, he told me what I needed, the site plan, where everything was going, permit by rule, the septic design, and all the locations of all that stuff, where the well was going to be and all that. So I presented all that to him. Mm-hmm. Met with DEP, they came out, went over everything, agreed with all of it, got everything, they said, okay, we're all set. Everyone was all set, calls me up, says he has a permit. My builder, Darren, it was his wife that actually came over to pick it up. And unfortunately, I had some family issues, which I explained to Jen, which is why I actually started a bit later than I did. And the new, I guess, code enforcement, once we were doing the walls, had said that he believed we hadn't been in front of planning. I was never told to go in front of planning. I didn't have a problem doing that. Right. So essentially what I wanted to do was, in building the new place, because, my dad's owned that for, over 60 plus years that he's, been on that lake. And it was, you can consider it a 3-season, but really we just kind of considered it a 1-season. I mean, we did travel up in fall, spring, even winter, but it's really was, it was time to put a new place up. So I like the bigger front yard, to be quite honest with you. So that's why I pushed it back as far as I possibly could, and still maintaining the 20 feet, setback off of the septic. So the septic is in the, far, if you're on the street looking down, the septic is in this front left corner, which is, well over 100 feet away from the water, as far back as I could get it. Right. Move the well, because you want that 100 feet away from the septic, which is diagonally over the far right. And the building I moved, as far back as I possibly could, as close to the street as I could get it. And I moved it essentially in the center of the property because I wanted it kind of more in the middle and as far back as I could go. I know that the site plan shows that it's, essentially like 51 off, which is behind the house that was there. But my engineer, Brian Knowles, the one who, does all my engineer work for me, he said, Chris, he said, go and actually take physical measurements. He goes, when we do the as-built, when it's done, that's what we do. That gives us the exact measurements, because most of those things are done on longitude, latitude basis of Google Earth is how they essentially do everything, until they do the physical survey when the project is done to get the exact measurements. So if you're looking, once again, on the street side, the front of the building that faces the water, on the left side, I'm 70 feet off the water. And on the right side, because it does cut in a little bit, it's 66 feet off the water. So, which I kind of drew, there was a piece of graph paper that kind of shows, they wanted me to do like a sketch on it. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I took the measurements on that, and I did put the measurements of what the garage was, which is already, that's been there. I didn't, remove that or do anything with it. So, I wanted to put it in the center and as far back as I could, because to be quite honest with you, I didn't want to go any closer to the water. I know everybody wants to, step out their front door and fall into the water, but I'm not a big fan of that. I wanted to be as far back as I could. And if they let me put the septic on the street, I'll go back even further if you want. But that was pretty much as far back as I could go. But, like I said, 70 feet off the water, I think that's a pretty good stretch over there, to be quite honest. Mostly everybody is, in that 15 to like 20, 25 foot mark off of the water on almost all of them places on that side of the lake, So my thought was I wanted to come back as far as I could. That's how I got to that basically location. The planning board part of it was never brought to my attention at all. And I do, you know, I have my builder Darren over here, and also Ken, who is doing the site work and all that. You know, they're both here. I mean, like I said, I went over this with the inspector. Me and my brother Dan met him several times on the site, went over, you know, everything with him. This was the part that was never brought to my attention.
So your side setbacks are 25 and 30, if I'm reading the latest sketch.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it was originally 1410 on the west side, I guess you would call it. And I moved it over so I could try to get it as close to the middle of the property as I could. So I got 25 on one side, and then I have 30 on the other side.
And that is for the proposed expansion building that you're building.
Yes.
That you're intending to build.
Yeah.
Questions, anyone? A lot of information, I realize. Do we need to do a site visit before we go any farther with this?
Yes.
That would make a lot more sense to me. It's hard for me to visualize just with the papers.
Not being able to see what's actually there. Any clarifications on what he's got there for drawings? You got that in front of you now?
Yeah.
I don't need any clarification.
Just what's the difference between the property line and the water line? Does the property line go up because the measurements are different? If you look at the plot plan, you measured from the water, correct?
For my wall, yes.
Yeah. It's quite a bit of difference.
Well, yeah, but like I said, when they do it by Google Earth or Google Maps, which is normally what surveys do until they do an as-built, that's, like I said, they go to longitude and latitude points, and that's where they get them from. So that's why it's always plus or minus. I'm way in the plus, but that's why the measurements are a bit different.
And together, you must have measured the back from the road back to your back into the house, the 45 feet.
Yeah, that is roughly in that 45 to, maybe 50-foot mark. I mean, I know with the way the road cuts in, it does have a little bit of a curve. So depending upon which line you went by, it's obviously give or take a few feet.
Yeah, you're back as far as you could possibly go without running into the septic system.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
Any other questions, folks? From our standpoint right now, we need to schedule a site visit. And then once we do that, we can meet again as a board, which can be the same time that we do the site visit, depending when it is. And then proceed from there. We can't,
Right, so,
right now, we can't make any determinations until we see exactly what we're dealing with.
okay, so originally, I mean, of course, I was, I had been on the phone with several different people. As I explained to Jen, normally, when you call, all you really get is an answer machine that's completely full on almost every department that you call into, so it makes it a bit difficult to try to get everything done here.
Right.
So, you guys only meet once a month, that is correct, right?
We can do more if the situation warrants,
Yeah.
and we have 2 applications before us right now in both shorelines.
Mm-hmm. But my question is, I know that when I spoke to Jen, they were trying to do an emergency workshop, I believe she called it, or something obviously the winter's coming, I mean, we all know that.
Right.
So that is a bit of an issue for myself, in considering that Darren and his crew is, obviously set to do the job, and well, naturally now if I'm gonna have to wait till December, which that's bringing us, this just keeps getting pushed further and further along. And I felt that, I haven't done anything wrong, because I was obviously not given the proper information. I know you guys have to follow procedure as well, but still, you would think that, unfortunately, the individual that this town hired and paid to do a job, does he have some accountability of the fact of him not telling people, I guess, the correct information, so to speak? I mean, so for myself to be penalized and have to keep waiting is kind of really not fair.
It isn't. I agree with you, Chris. His foundation's poured. His old camp's gone. His new foundation is poured. I mean, I know a site visit would be nice, but as the excavation guy, you can't get any closer to the road, and you can't center it any more from the property lines. So what are you gonna make him do? Move it closer to the lake? I mean, he has no camp, and it's you guys' fault. It's code enforcement. It's a guy that you hired's fault. He has no camp with the concrete in the ground. The only option from here is for you to come out and go, well, tear it out. I don't understand it's pretty cut and dry on mine. I'm like, he moved it as far from the lake as he could. The septic, if you go any further away from the lake, it's gonna be in the road. He's minimum setback from the road. He's 20 feet with his foundation. And he's centered on his lot. I don't understand I just don't really understand what the holdup is here. I mean, if it was my house, I'd already have a lawyer, but I'm like, he's been held up for like a month already, waiting for you guys to get together, and now we're gonna do a site walk? I'm sorry, but it just seems like unfair treatment.
How come you guys couldn't have done a site walk? You knew we were coming.
I mean, this was a month ago. He can't even get a hold of anyone to do anything about this.
I'm not allowed to do anything until I have the application in my hand. And I had an application in my hand as of 11/4.
11/4 is the date on all the paperwork.
So that's when I can actually start the process. Once I approve the application, I have 35 days to process it.
We had,
Go ahead, Jen.
Mr. Philbrook, he was out of town, he was up north, and we were trying to put together the workshop, and we did have the workshop with Mike Morris, because the board is new, so that kind of brought everybody up to speed. So, and then that was last week that we had it with him. So,
No, well, the other thing too, if I may, like I said, she's the only one that I've actually been able to talk to, whether it's been on the phone, texting back and forth. I mean, in all actuality, she's really the only one that I've talked to. I did speak to one of the selectmen that said he was aware of what was going on, asked me if I could email the plot plan, which I did, and I just said, can you at least call me, email, whatever, just so I know you got it. I left several messages for him. I still never heard back from him. So I only talked to him essentially that one time, and then finally she got into the picture over here. And even the part about filling out the application, well, the problem is my building permit and all the stuff associated with it, and we text back and forth. I was meeting her on a Saturday to fill that part of it out. Well, he's got the building permit and all the information, so there's certain things on that we needed to fill out the, this shoreline zone, whatever you guys call it there. How am I supposed to do that if I didn't have that information? And I told him, I don't care, I'll meet you at night, I'll meet you on the weekend, whatever. To me, it makes no difference. I'll meet you here at midnight if you want. That is not a problem. How are we supposed to fill it out if we don't have all the information to fill the thing out? Why is this guy driving around with mine and whoever else's information? Shouldn't it be here in town hall? That is the correct location for that stuff, correct?
So you're outside of this group's control. We're a planning board, we're not the select board, we're not the code enforcement, we don't control everything. We just do our function of taking your application, verifying that you meet the requirements that we have to meet, and we either approve or disapprove.
And so the fact though that what I do have there is completely gone now, so what am I supposed to do, pitch a tent there if it was disapproved? I don't know, it's over a half an acre of prime pristine location on a lake. I guess I would be kind of curious, what would be the disapproval of it? I don't really understand why it would. So all these other shacks that are on this place, they're okay, but I wouldn't be.
I have to verify that what you want to do, and I don't see a problem with it right now, but I can't act for the board. But I have to take what you've presented, run it against our local ordinance, and visually see that everything is being met the way it's supposed to be done, and then we make our determination.
Okay, so on the site visit, well, Darren, my builder, who lives across the street, is it beneficial for me to pay him to obviously be there with you guys when you guys show up? Do you do that? I'm assuming you would consult with either the builder or my site guy, or one of them, correct?
We need someone there to show us what you have. Yes.
So do I need to be there as well?
No, anybody who can represent you.
Well, it's not a matter of showing you what we're gonna do. Foundation's in the ground.
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
can
see.
show up there and go, there it is, it's done.
Back up now, okay?
No, if we back up now, we're gonna get to the point where the inspector gave him a permit, and he thought he was all set to go. Tears his house down, puts a foundation in, and gets shut down.
And he's right too, that the original plan, it shows the new house, it shows the original camp, and it shows the new house, the lakeside wall of the new house on the back wall of the existing camp. So when I tore the camp down, I offset the uphill wall of the existing camp, and I put the new house right to the plan. So it's exactly the original site plan that he had. The house is within an inch of where it is on that plan. So you have the plan showing where it is and where it is in relation to the property lines and the lake, and the foundation's already it's in the ground, so it's pretty plain to see when you do go out there.
So I guess how would we know when you are going out there? Does somebody call me? Do they call Darren? Does this individual contact me, Jen? I guess how do I know what's gonna happen?
She's the planning board clerk, and she will make the arrangements with, I would assume with you, because you are the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can select whoever you so wish.
And so how long is this gonna take? Can you go out next week? Everything's good and we proceed?
We have a separate application coming in tonight. And what I'd like to do is coordinate a site visit for both things at the same time. If they don't show tonight, we don't discuss them, then we'll schedule those.
Well, Darren, can I ask you a question? So, as far as, whatever, obviously if you have to be there and it costs me, then I don't care, but is that something you're comfortable with going over this with them?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Just in case, we've had, like I said, some family issues that have gone on, and, we, unfortunately, things that we have to deal with, but, so it's not like it's right down the street from me, but I would make the, appropriate things need to be, and even if Ken needs to be there along with it, whichever, I guess the sooner would be better, because like I said, we kind of have everything on hold now, and obviously I've just got a place there that I can't do nothing with at the moment. And I know it gets a lot colder up here much quicker on the lake than it does in other areas, so naturally the sooner would be better, obviously, than the latter part. I mean, I'm assuming you have to coordinate with all these people on the board as far as being over there.
Because your floor's poured inside, so you gotta kinda get ahead of the frost.
Well, correct, it needs to be covered and stuff. All right, well, so I guess what is it, that you make a motion to go out there and view it, is that what is going to happen at this moment here?
Right now, we're all in agreement that we need to do the sidewalk.
Okay. And then how long do you think it would take for everybody to figure out when that would happen? I mean, if this was, May 1st, I wouldn't be as apprehensive as being now, what is it, November 6th, 7th, whatever the date is. It's, we're fighting weather now also.
So once we do the second application, then we'll meet together tonight. We'll set a date when we can do the sidewalk for you.
Okay. So you think tonight you'd be, aside from whether the second one comes, but tonight you guys would be able to essentially schedule it? Okay, so then Jen, I guess you could.
I mean, it'll be within the next few weeks, but I just can't tell you it's gonna be this Saturday. I can't tell you that right now.
Oh, all right, Jen, do you have anything else to add? I mean, Garen? Well, I guess at that point, if you can get in touch with us, the sooner the better, and then I guess then we can, hopefully go out there. So, in the fact of you going out there, I think there's 5 members and yourself, right? So 6 of you, is that correct? Yes. So, in the event of going out there and everything looks that it's okay according to your standards and stuff, so do I have to wait till the next meeting for you guys to vote on that, or am I able to then continue to work?
What I would like us to be able to do is do the sidewalk and then have a meeting right after the sidewalk, and we can decide then what action needs to be done.
Okay.
So we do it the same night.
Okay. And then at that point, like I said, well, I guess Jen, you got my shop number, the cell, you have all my phone
I'll let you
numbers.
know when they schedule it.
Right.
And you said the DEP has done a site walk already and approved the location?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because the way that it's showing, it doesn't really meet the shoreline zoning because it's supposed to be at least 75 feet. But the size of your lot, it can't. I'm just, as long as it's been, didn't see any approval in this thing from the DEP. I see the main conservation, but I don't see anything from the DEP in here.
Because at the time when I gave him all the information, I had received an email, because there was a couple things I think that he had called me and he says, Chris, I didn't see this or this, so my engineer had emailed it to him. Because I didn't realize that was, I guess when you do it online, you don't realize, when they print out the paper, it's front and back. And so I didn't realize that there was a back part of it. So my engineer had emailed what needed to be emailed. And then it was about 15 minutes later, he had got the info and he said he had called me back and then he had emailed me and said, all right, Chris, we're all set. I approved it. What Brian needed to send me, we're good. Okay. So when I got all that information together, which was the septic, the application for the building permit, the permit by rule, all that stuff there, I gave all that to Mike. And I said, okay, Mike, I have everything. And he said, okay, he said the only thing left is the site walk from DEP. So he had called me and told me that they had come out and he had showed them, I mean, like you said, I know you're looking on paper, sometimes it's hard to jive until you're right there. Right. He said they had come out there, they had looked at it, and they said they were all set. And he said, I'm putting your permit together right now. I will call you when it's ready, which I think was, I don't know, maybe a few days after, or it was a little bit after that. He had called and said it was done, and Darren's wife came down here and picked it up.
There's one clarification that I mentioned at the beginning, and Chip just reminded me. All we're able to do is the relocation authorization. The expansion still has to come out of the code enforcement office.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do our part here, that's only part of the puzzle. We're still going to have to get approval from code enforcement for the expansion that we have to do.
Now, what do you mean for, I guess I'm a little unclear.
The only thing we can authorize is the original size of the building that you tore down.
Mm-hmm.
Relocating that, but since you're expanding it from the original size of the home, we aren't able to
That's not in that
grant
category.
permission for that. That still has to go through code enforcement.
How does a guy issue a building permit? Are you kidding?
Well, yeah, but I know that.
It's like, it's
and
a
I
building
was-
permit signed from Lebanon, and now it's like, throw that out the window, I just don't understand.
Now,
It's crazy.
I was told by Mike that it's a third. I know she said 30%, but I was told it was a third, which is 33%. But I did the math, and you know, when I was talking to her originally, I didn't have my file in front of me. But my original building was 26 by 36, 2 floors, and in the new building, there's an 18 by 15 center section that is completely open all the way through to the second floor, and my builder is right here that can verify that. So when you minus that out, I am still under what I need to be, whether we go 30% or 33%. And I was told 33%. A third in my book is 33 and a third percent. So I am still under that. And I don't have a problem telling the new code enforcement officer the same thing.
He's the one that has to authorize that. We don't have that authority.
Yeah.
But we can do the relocation part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So is that another board that meets somewhere, or what is
No,
it?
that's strictly code.
That's the building inspector.
Okay.
How did this build stop and then come back to us? What happened?
The building
How did it
inspector
start?
changed, I think, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So somebody came out to inspect it
For a
and said, wait a
foundation
minute.
inspection.
Yeah, he was saying that, oh, well, you have not gone through planning. Planning, well, what do you mean through planning? I mean, I'm not hiding anything here, it's right out in the middle of the water here, I mean, there's, you know, whether you drive by the street or drive by the lake, there's no hiding it, you know? And I says, well, I was unaware of the whole planning board part of it, which I was, right from the very beginning. Or I would have done this when I did this thing last year. So I was told I'm good. I mean, even the temporary service has been put up. The power's moved from the house to the temporary service. I mean, everything that needed to be done was done, except for the planning part of it. And I went over all the measurements with Mike and everything. We went over all that stuff. I was in, I was in perfect what I was supposed to be, even with the expansion and all that stuff there. So I went over all this stuff with him. And then the new code enforcement guy is the one that then I think his name is Brian, I believe, the one who was temporarily helping out, said that you guys didn't go in front, looking at this, you guys didn't go in front of planning board. And then I guess come to find out there's all kinds of problems with everybody else's permits, that all these things were done wrong. Well, I didn't hire this guy. The town of Lebanon hired this guy. So if they have a problem with him and what he did, it should be with that guy. It shouldn't be with the fact of me tearing down a place that I have and putting up a new place. Because I could see if I was on a shoebox, a 20 by 20 lot, and I wanted to put up a Taj Mahal. I think what I'm putting up jives with the amount of space I have.
Permit by rule in here. Didn't he say you had a permit by rule?
It's the last page.
Sorry.
No, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
The last page?
Never mind.
So what is the total square footage of the proposed house that you're gonna build? I'm just curiosity myself.
Well, it's.
I know it says 44 by 26 is what the.
Well, it's actually supposed to be 28. That is a misprint on there.
44 by 28?
Yeah.
And it's 2 stories?
2 stories, but there's a, hang on one second, let me just find that page real quick. Yeah, 28 by 44, which is 1232 times 2, which is 2464, minus 18 by 15, which is open from first floor to second floor, all the way through to the ceiling. That minus is 270, which gives us a total of 2194. And my original was 1872, which is originally what I had. I went by the 33%, but even if you go by the 30%, which is 561.6, it comes to 2433.6.
What was your original structure? 18 what?
No, 26 by 36.
The original?
My
One you
original
tore down
that I tore down, yes.
was 26 by 26, 2-story.
26 by 36.
36.
What was the square footage on it? I think is what she wanted.
I'll figure it out.
Oh, 936 times 2 is 1872.
So we don't have any control of that, but I was just curious. I was just curious. That's where we stand.
All right, well, and so we should have an idea tonight of essentially when you guys can go there.
Yes, before we leave tonight, we'll schedule it.
You guys have any questions, Sharon? All right, well, so is there a vote on saying that we discussed this, or what, do I just leave, what happens?
You're welcome to leave, or you're welcome to stay, but
We'll schedule it.
we'll schedule it and we'll.
Mr. Griffin will be in contact to let you know when that will be.
Okay.
We'll
All right.
schedule it tonight.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Do I find my pen, please? I see Thank you.
Just come back. That whole crowd for one thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're all together?
Yeah.
You're gonna take us all on one by one? Yeah. Really, we're a friendly crowd, you know? I would like to suggest that we table Mr. Cavallaro to later and let these gentlemen do their presentation. And if he doesn't show, then we won't proceed in that one.
Okay.
Alright. So, give my quick spiel here. Okay. Oh yeah. They come prepared, yeah. Alright, so my name is Tim Susi. I'm the traffic engineer for the Maine Department of Transportation down in southern Maine. Sorry. So while he's setting up, I'll just quickly go over what this process is. State statute requires that any development that produces more than 100 trips during their peak hour of travel get a permit from the Maine Department of Transportation. And so essentially what we look at are the traffic and mobility and safety of our roadway. That's the prime concern. We don't really, it's not our business what's being built, just the number of trips and the impact to our network. So Sebago Technics, and this is the, I don't know if you want to introduce.
Danny Buzianis, I'm the property owner of Lebanon Crossing.
I'm Derek Colwell, Sebago Technics. I'm the engineer that did the traffic study for the project.
And I'm Curtis Thompson. I'm a traffic engineer that worked with Derek on the project.
Just a question, just on the trip counts, 100 trip counts, just for clarification, the trip count is one car,
okay,
two cars, can you just clarify that?
Sure, yeah, a trip is entering, so when a vehicle enters the site, that's one trip. When that vehicle leaves, that's another trip. So to get 150 people entering and exiting in an hour, and it's the busiest hour, so for a coffee shop, that's typically going to be in the morning. And so they've prepared a 1 through 6. It's essentially gathers together the basic traffic information. We don't need to go over everything in depth, but you know, that's what I do. I review what they provide. the main thing I'd like to get at, and they'll probably go over what's being proposed, so you guys just have a feel for what they're looking to build. Then really, I really like to get the town's input. Normally, a lot of times we'll deal with the town manager or a director of planning. Actually, this is the first one I could find on record for town Lebanon, so I don't know if we've ever held a permit meeting here before, so something new. But really, we're looking for input from the town on concerns. They essentially they have to come once I identify and once the town identifies any concerns, we can have them review it. What potentially comes out of that is mitigation. I can't say what yet until we've, I guess, again discussed mobility and traffic safety concerns. If there are none, then there are none. But that's the point of this meeting. So I don't know who wants to present what you're building, and you can even have this chair.
We haven't formally submitted any applications for. We've talked to the town a couple times. In light of the last applicant, a code enforcement officer cannot issue a building permit for a project like this without an okay or a permit from the Maine Department of Transportation. So that's why we usually start with the Maine Department of Transportation to get the ball rolling to present that project, because we definitely need a permit from them before we can, he can issue or she can issue a permit for us to start construction tomorrow, but these guys will step in because they pretty much own the road and put a stop to it. So we always start with that. But we purchased the land a few months ago, and we've been, whether it's myself or Sebago Technics or my attorney has talked to the town just to see what we need to do to get approvals and move forward with a project. We've done a few of these projects in the past throughout in southern Maine and in New Hampshire. So what I generally do is we purchase a piece of property and we'll develop some type of either single tenant or multi-tenant little strip mall retail center, and we usually occupy anywhere from, in this case we have it for a 2,000 square foot structure, but we can go up to 6,000 square feet. But the site plan itself would all the parking and travel day one of the start of the project. Like I said, I've done a few of these projects in the past. I think the most recent one was over in Milton, New Hampshire, called Milton Crossing. I think the other one probably closest to here, which in Milton we took the old Ray's Marina and we developed it into a 3-unit retail center with a Dunkin' Donuts and a Dollar General, and then there's still one vacant unit left. We also did the one in North Berwick, Maine, North Berwick Crossing, which is a Dunkin' Donuts, a Subway, and York Hospital. So I can pass these around, but what it basically shows is just some of the pre and post developments that we did. It's no secret that we're looking at, possibly. I also, on the part of my development, we also own and operate numerous Dunkin' Donuts throughout, southern Maine. Closest one again is, probably North Berwick. We also have the one in a couple of them in Biddeford. We did the one in Milton. Not 100% sure if this is, what the final plan is going to be, that it's going to be a Dunkin' Donuts or anything, but that's one of the possible tenants that we're seeing if it works with. Even though it could be the tenant, it's not 100% until we see how the process goes and if the site works for it. So I'll pass these around. It's just got photos of what we've done, site plans. Where we are, generally the tenant and the landlord, we try to build really high-end, nice structures that stand the test of time. You'll see a lot of, you'll see colonial, and that's not that was the before. The first picture is the before, where it was a used car lot in North Berwick, and that's what it looks like now. Yeah.
Been there once or twice, both ends.
So we'll do usually, typically do a colonial style building, high-end finishes, like whether it's a brick or stone wrap, high-end siding, architectural, shingled roofs, plenty of landscaping. We don't cut back on parking. That's why you'll see there's a lot of, I think we had it's over 40 parking spots for this one. Yeah, we have the Waterboro one also. So we
Is that the deferred one, the one where everything's facing the other side, the other way?
Yes. So that's not our development. I am a tenant there. Across from the hospital is ours, across from Southern Maine Medical. On that one, we are a tenant that we lease. I know it's a backwoods style building. California designer, where they want to be as close to the street as possible, but when you have such a large, detention pond, I would have turned it the other way around and had the building facing the front, and the parking in the front. So it is what it is, but it's still a little different than what we do. So again, plenty of parking, plenty of queuing space for the drive-through. We're not like I said, we are a tenant and the landlord, so we want to focus on a high quality project that works for both. We're not just looking to develop and flip the properties and whatnot. We're long-term oriented. We work with the towns and hope to put a beautiful project out there.
Where exactly is it located on 202? I see it says 291 Carl Brogy Highway.
So it's
roughly where the flea market was.
It is where the flea market was.
Okay, just on the other side of trains then.
Yeah,
so
the property.
It's a big property, so it does abut trains at one point.
Okay, I live right down near this.
Yep.
I was kind of wondering where I live just on the other side of trains.
Yeah.
From our permits perspective, we're pursuing it like it's a Duncan because that's the traffic information that's been provided. I understand that.
Yeah, so from a traffic engineering perspective, to kind of estimate how much new traffic this will generate. For coffee shops in Maine, there's a study that was completed by an engineering firm a few years ago, kind of studying your different Dunkin' Donuts, Aroma Joe's, all these different classifications. And Dunkin' Donuts turns out to be the worst case scenario for traffic, worst cases in most traffic. So starting this project, as you said, he's not exactly sure on what it might be. We go with the worst case scenario because it with the traffic engineering, it's okay to be a little conservative to start, and then you work from there. So it's either, if it isn't Dunkin' Donuts, then it represents what it is. If it ends up being something else, the studies show that it doesn't have quite the amount of traffic generated with it. So, but
Still safe.
Yeah, exactly.
And with the traffic, I was around when we did that. We actually, worked with the state on that traffic study, and it showed that approximately like 80%. It used to be that the rule would be like for a Dunkin' or a McDonald's or something like that. 50% of the traffic would be pass by, and 50% would be destination. So destination meaning like you go out of your way to get there, and 50% would be pass by. So if you it's on the way. So you think of a Walmart, that's like a destination location. Not 100%, but highly as a destination location. The Dunkins came out, we did what's called a license plate study. So we actually sat there, we hired a firm to sit there and see, if your license plate 123 and you took a right in, did you take a right out or a left out? So if you took a right in and a right out, chances are you were on your way somewhere. If you took a left in, left out, then you're on your way somewhere. But if you did the opposite, we counted it as a destination. So came out, I believe it was 80%.
Yeah.
Was the
70.
70% was the so 70% of the traffic going by, whether there's a Dunkin' there today or there wasn't one yesterday, 70% of the traffic is still probably going to go by that site.
Which makes sense. I mean, you're getting your coffee on your way in the morning.
Yeah.
So Sebago's has some rough numbers on what we've got coming in and going out. I don't know how in depth to go here. I've we've done a lot of Dunkins at this point, so I'm pretty familiar. But I mean, you think in your peak hour, you've got maybe 60.
Yeah. So just and these numbers don't really mean anything out of context necessarily, but for example, during the AM peak hour, we're saying that this will generate 230 trips, which is one in is one and out is one, so it's not 230, it's the total movements in and out of the site. But out of that 230, like we were just saying, 70% of those would most likely already be on the roadway. So it's the way we're showing it would be approximately 35 new people driving to this site over today. That's the way the numbers pan out in our study. And it's kind of as Tim was saying, he's dealt with a lot of them. It's an industry accepted way of doing these traffic studies. So
it won't really impact the capacity of the roadway. That's not going to change much. It's mostly existing traffic. A lot of times what we focus on these lower volume developments, relatively lower, are the entrances. We also look at the nearest intersection, which in this case would be Depot Road and Little River, just to see how it impacts that. It is over, not getting into a lot of details, we do require a little more information because this is above 200 trips. Our statute requires me to go a little bit further in depth, but not a ton. I won't get into the details of that, but mostly what I'm focusing on is what's on this page, which none of you have, so there's no point in referencing it, are the entrances and if any impacts to Depot Road. I don't expect much where this is mostly pass by, but that's obvious. That's the most significant intersection. That's right next to it. So, we also look from the safety perspective. We have them look at high crash locations in the area. I don't know if there are any.
The end of Upper Middle Road, that's where I live, and there's at least a crash there every other week. There's a crash there.
Upper Middle
Road. Okay.
It does have to be in the study. Essentially, it has to be in the study area of this project, meaning all of their projects off of 202.
For example, we pulled the crash data from Maine DOT at. Well, we have. What am I looking at here?
Animal.
Yeah.
Trains.
I mean we at the Depot Road, Creamery Hill Road.
Yeah. That's the other side of Upper Middle. It was Creamery Hill. Yeah.
So there was one crash in the last 3 years reported. Now that's we can only get as good as what's reported, can't.
Yeah.
But this is all Maine DOT data. Intersection of Depot Street and Lower Cross Road. So those were the ones we looked at. And
a crash has to be reported to the police. $1,000 in damage or greater. Anything involving an injury or fatality, obviously, that's going to be counted. But your near misses, unfortunately, are not counted. And I understand. Trust me,
How does that get reported?
Near misses?
Well, no, crash data.
Crash data? Well, essentially, the police officer will fill out a report, and eventually that report works.
So Maine State Police will submit that,
or whichever police department collects.
We don't have our own, so it's Maine State Police.
Is it whoever covers your area? Yeah, Maine State Police. You don't have any county sheriffs that cover.
Well, no, Maine State Police cover 4 of the sheriffs here.
Okay, so whenever they're called to come out to an scene of a crash. They'll fill out their report, assuming it's greater than $1,000 worth of damage, which I'm assuming if you're being called, it most likely will be.
Right.
Then they'll fill out their report, and eventually, within a few months, that data gets into our database. I don't know all the in-betweens from his hand to our database.
Is it something that our fire and EMS could do? Because your crash data seems in the last 3 years seems probably lacking, and so. I don't necessarily know if that's because the reports aren't making their way to you.
No. If the police are coming to a crash, it's getting reported to us. There shouldn't be any discrepancy. I can't say there is zero discrepancy, but if it's any serious type of a crash that results in $1,000 of damage, which nowadays isn't that much, it should be making it into this database. If it isn't, then there's a problem that I'm not aware of. It's a very common. It's sometimes perception versus what's actually gets documented. I don't doubt there. I know, and we were talking about Depot Road earlier. I don't doubt that there are a lot of near misses there, and that's an intersection of some history there. The one with the flashing.
Center Road.
I'm sorry, it's not Depot Road.
No,
Center
okay.
Road. But in lower volume areas, you simply just due to the lack of volume, you don't get the volume of crashes. I mean, so. I mean, we can potentially look into it further. I don't think there's missing data here. It's just and I'm assuming, what were the years you?
I was gonna say, what years did this span?
It's we do the last 3. And this one was, I believe it was after they released the 2016. Yeah, 2014, 2015, and 2016. So anything before 2014 for this type of study, it's the main DOT requires to look at the last 3 years of crash history. So yeah, that's where that's coming from.
And it might not. I'm assuming he doesn't have 17 data in there. So if it's been something very recent,
they don't release it compiled until then. Even until like maybe April next year, so it seems.
I can get it. But, so by our standards, there are no high crash locations in the area. Now, if again, the point of this meeting is to get feedback from the town on what your concerns are. I can't say necessarily that we'll do something about it, but we can't even think about it until any local issues that's really the main goal of this meeting. We've presented a little bit of traffic data, not too much, hopefully. I have my concerns, which I can voice, will voice shortly, but that's our most looking at feedback, or not really concerns. I mean, things I like to have look into are any turning pockets warranted for the entrances. That's kind of a standard thing when you're in Dunkin' Donut volumes. You're kind of on the fringe there, so. That's something I would like to look into. I don't know if any left or right turn pockets are necessary or not.
Yes, we looked at the.
Funny you're talking about that. I was just thinking about that. What if someone's coming out of Rochester, coming through that intersection, Depot Road and Little River Road, and then decide they want to turn into the driveway? A lot of people just hit that. They stop at the stop sign. They're not anticipating someone stopping at Dunkin' Donuts over there.
They will.
They will.
It goes from 3 lanes down to 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're watching the lane change at the same time you're going to have that entrance coming up.
Okay, so we do have standards. I don't know if you.
So as Tim said, we anticipate that we'd have to do the analysis. So main DOT lays out these guidance warrants. For when you need a left turn lane and when you need a right turn lane at a new driveway, and it's a function of the opposing volume. So if you're taking, say, a left turn into this site, it's a function of the volume coming southbound, westbound, whatever it is, versus the advancing volume. So if you're taking a left, the amount of northbound traffic, and what percentage of that traffic is actually taking a left into the site. So it's when you do these developments, it's all based on that estimated generated traffic, because obviously you don't know exactly how much traffic's going to be out there until the thing's built.
And one of the things that attracted us to this site is you do have the signalized intersection. So sometimes being right at the corner is a little difficult to make the left turn because you get the opposing traffic that are stopped, so it's hard. So being like Waterboro, being like a couple lots off the intersection really helps us out because one, you've got the stopped car, so to your point, you're not at 60 miles an hour unless you got like a super fast car and you're gunning it, which isn't too often, and hopefully the police will take notice. But one, it's there's some time to ramp up your speed, so I think you've got slower moving traffic. And then the same thing the opposite way, people are slowing down because they're anticipating the traffic light. So I think that,
there's a drop in the speed limit.
Yeah, 45 there, right?
Yeah, it drops down to 45. Do you guys look at that?
On paper.
Yeah.
Do you look at speed reductions in those areas with the amount of, I know you don't look at the existing businesses, but there's other
Speed reductions as in the sense
Like-
of if this went on, what their speeds on Route 202 would do?
Yeah, like the speed drops.
Yeah, so we don't, I mean, we can if there's particular concern about it, but usually, and what we'll end up doing for Tim for the next part of this application is actually analyze what traffic we'll be doing at each of these new intersections. How long, if you want to take a left in, how long you'll have to wait for there to be a gap in the traffic coming, what the predicted would be based upon all these volumes and speeds.
I live on that road.
Yeah, so.
It's a 5-minute wait to get on the highway.
Yeah, so, if we do it and we see that it is a long wait to take a left in, then Tim will see that and say, if it wants to be built, there'll have to be something done about it. So,
Yeah.
that's all the next step of what we look
Varies
at.
in time of year for sure, and summertime there's real heavy traffic, and spring, summer is the worst. Is when to try to get out onto that road.
You got 3 businesses there. You got this one that you're proposing. You got trains, and you have the Mutters across the street, which is only peak 4 times a year that they have events, but it creates a lot of traffic, foot traffic as well as car traffic.
They're only about 4 times a year then?
Yeah, they have events about once a month throughout the summer.
They're like almost directly across from where the proposed site is. They got
How
that.
come typically we have one in,
Yeah, it's,
one out,
4x4
and on this
proving
one you have an
grounds,
in and
I
out
guess is what
on
it's
the
called.
same?
So I've done it both ways, and DOT likes, sometimes we'll say, one curb cut. What I find with the drive-through for internal, which you guys, I don't think DOT really looks at the internal layout as much as
just the queue spill.
So what I like about the 2 is this one's a full curb cut, so it's in and out, but this one's only out. So the cars for the drive-through would loop around, order, pick up. There's usually a 5-car stack between that, and that gives time for the team inside to make the orders, present the orders, and then as this car, instead, she's a customer somewhere.
Your Milton Dunkin' Donuts, I hate it. Makes 0 sense as a driver, like when you're trying to come out and then somebody wants to pull in and you're like, who's going? Alright, listen, if you have let's say I'm leaving, okay, and I wanted to come in, so I came here, but somebody came through drive-through, and we want to go. Now, I'm paying attention to traffic coming because speed limit slows down up here. People are flying by, so I'm paying attention to this side, so I'm like gonna gun it and get out, but then somebody else comes here and now we bang right there.
You're taking a right into the wrong lane though.
Why?
You said you're taking a right here?
Why couldn't I turn right there?
You can, but you said
And then this person's gonna come out and go this way.
And that person's driving the wrong way.
Well, I can't control how everybody else drives.
So we have done single entrance like that in like the North Park. The one in Milton, we couldn't get the cars to go around, and the town invited us to put a location there. And we developed that property because behind the building is a ski hill, a mountain. So that's why we had to do the turn. But no accidents, knock on wood.
That was creative.
It was.
I love the people that. Do you own that Dunkin' Donuts? Yeah, I love people who work there.
Thank you. No, long story short, we went to Wakefield. We did the development in Wakefield on 16th.
Did you get your drive-through in Wakefield?
Opening up on Monday. Yes.
Do you know every Dunkin' Donuts?
I live in Dunkin' Donuts.
Clearly.
So on Route 16.
So you can't wait.
So on Route 16, we had some, I don't even want to call them permit issues, but they just some people in the town didn't want to see the building go there on 16. It's off 16, but long story short, it took about it took 18 months, I think, 24 months to get the approval, but they were thinking that it would be something like, I don't know, the Rochester look or the Sanford look, not a colonial building, not, but at the end, even the Historical Society came back to us and said, wow, you put up a nice building, we were impressed. So during that whole process, the town of Milton reached out to me and said, hey, if you're having a hard time getting the building in Wakefield, come to Milton, and I said, I'm not gonna give up on Wakefield, you know, but I'll do both, you know, so I did both, and I believe one of the gentlemen that sits on the code enforcement officer from Milton, I believe lives in your town. So you can reach out to him too, he's
When are you hoping to start construction?
You're thinking of our previous code enforcement officer who lived in Milton.
Milton. Okay, that's it, yeah, so I guess.
And if you heard.
I didn't get the whole story, but, you know, he was a customer over there, but yeah, around during the process. He didn't issue the building permit over there. So.
I just don't like the.
Yeah, and in North Berwick, if you look in North Berwick, we have you know, a double lane within and then a double lane without.
I just honestly, my personal opinion is that's a lot of. I would have preferred one in, one out, just like we did for the condominium association we just approved, because of the history on that road right there. And I know that your data doesn't show it, but I can tell you there's been more than one accident in the past 3 years over there.
Yeah, right, the property right next to trains.
A train's long.
There's.
Yeah, I remember.
It just didn't get reported.
Well, you know, hey, I don't report it personally. So.
Right.
I remember trying to start construction
on
this.
I think we
Do you
closed
have
the
any,
passing zone as a
you
result of
know,
that.
I just know that
dates
there's a
on
lot
any
of
of this?
traffic that flows through there, and
or
for safety.
you know, at least
And Trains has
hoping
3
for
entrances too, correct?
yes.
Yeah, so that doesn't,
It's
not
really
ideal.
confusing over there at that business, but.
Not to talk about it, something different, but yeah, I mean, more entrances can make more opportunities for issues, that's for sure.
Issues.
Well, you have a high incident, I won't say accidents that you're not getting recordings, but you have a high incident report starting from the mobile home park right down through to the stop fence.
Okay.
And I live just about a quarter mile up from the mobile home park, and I hear the screams. Yeah, well, not that. I hear the rescue squads, you know. So
Sirens.
they're going by. That's why I'm interested when I heard your data.
No, we did have a number at the intersection itself, which it might, depending how stuff is reported, it might get kind of tossed into there. Because you're saying from the light up this way.
Yeah.
Up to the mobile home park. That just seems to be a very. There's so many people turning off the road, and folks that's a high speed area. It's a 55 miles.
That's interesting. If there's been, because if enough, like you say, for emergency crews to show up, that should be reported.
Yeah, that's why we were kind of
So
shocked.
my wife got rear-ended right at the end of our road turning in.
I mean, it might be worth double checking to make sure the nodes are right.
Yeah.
Even just for
It'd be
future
worthwhile
reference.
to check with just our fire rescue team.
Yeah, just future reference, like now, so trains wouldn't have had to go through this review because it was an existing building or something, or
What trains have gone?
through a review like this?
If they're being built today, probably. This process started, I want to say, late '90s, early 2000s.
No, I was just asking because you said this was the only one you've done, and there's definitely a lot of
In Lebanon.
yeah,
in Lebanon.
and there's a
And
lot
also-
of there's a lot of traffic there. They have a booming business.
Oh yeah, no, they're it's called grandfathered. I mean, they've been there for
that because the building was there. That's why I was asking. So the building's there. Even if you change the use of the building, there's no.
well, depends, yeah.
Yeah.
Could trigger it.
If they were to if they expand and generate 100 more trips than what they're currently producing during that peak hour, so not an extra 50 in, 50 out, then they would potentially have to go through this process.
But what triggers this process is the fact that this process has to be complete before they submit the application to get
a driveway,
building
a
permit.
driveway permit,
code
right?
enforcement.
From the last plan we saw,
To get a
there was
driveway
the
permit,
the
they
last
gotta go
one
through
we
this.
got to make this like a
we don't-
drive-through
I mean,
on
we-
each side and.
Yeah, for you guys, yes.
Yes.
We put we thought that the town, would benefit from a financial institution, whether it be a bank or a credit union, but fortunately I wasn't able to attract any of them. There's no credit union or bank in town, and so
True.
I tried. I'll keep trying, we submit, but I tell them, look, you go to Biddeford, there's like 30 banks and credit unions. you know.
That's downside.
You wanna rob trains, you wanna rob trains, not a bank, cause it's like 10 years, like, you know, it's federally insured, so it's a bad thing to rob a bank, but, and usually you know, and that's why we've left an optional 4,000 square feet, you know. But I think, you know, what this looks like, the building layout, I think that could, you know, change in time if we do get a tenant between now and you asked when we'd start construction, you know, probably looking at springtime, you know, if all goes well with the permitting and everything.
So within a year.
Yeah.
You're hoping, yeah.
But I don't think this, you know, this could change, but I don't think, you know, plenty of parking and you know, the circulation I think would pretty much stay the same, you know.
So the traffic survey, is that taken in account, the possible another 2 units on this, or is that specifically just for the Dunkin' Donuts?
This traffic study is just for the Dunkin' Donuts. If the use comes back for more, we'd have to go back to Tim with the change in use and go from there to see what impact it would have.
But if we added like a low volume user, you know, and let's say it's like a doctor's office that opens up at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, you know, after our peak, you know, this is still, you know, built to handle, you know, 130, 120 cars an hour at the peak. So, which would probably be like between 6 and 7, 7 and 8 in the morning, 8 to 9. But if you had like a Subway, let's say, you know, their peak is a different time, but it's also a lot less than what's out there. And the other thing, so like, you know, I don't want to use the worst case, but the worst case is like, you know, is a Dunkin', because number one, it's the, you know, morning hour, so there's already a lot of cars on the road. So having like, you know, 230 trip counts at 12 o'clock is, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot less than having 230 trip counts at 8 o'clock when everyone's on the road. So it makes it, you know, a lot easier to take that left turn out, you know, at 12 o'clock than at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Does that driveway impact the wetlands there? And is that a DEP, that has a DEP permit that you need for that?
So it's a permit by rule because it's less than the I believe it's the 1 acre of impervious development. There's a couple small areas, you know, on the fringe that affect the wetlands, but nothing that it's less than the amount that needed to do a full DEP. I think it's a phase 1 or phase 2 permit, but we've submitted the paperwork to DEP, and they didn't come back with anything. So, you know, I guess it's a issued permit by rule. Yeah, but we've stayed away from the wetlands. You know, like I said, there's a little bit in the back. You know, we're gonna put the septic system over here, and I think the well is up in his hair.
Okay. He was asking about general schedule. The latest I had, and if it changed, was obviously the permitting can change all of it, but you're looking at April 2018. Yeah,
to start
that's what we had.
Yeah, spring. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Weather.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. We cut you off before. Did you actually look at the?
Yeah. So yeah, like we were saying, we were prepared for it. So, Maine DOT has these charts, like I was saying, and there's one for 40 and one for 50 miles per hour. So we're at 45.
I don't know why we don't have a chart for 40.
Yeah. So at 40, and obviously he'll double check all of this once, and we'll probably double check it again before we officially submit the section 7 as it's called. But for 40 miles per hour, the lane isn't warranted, and for 50 miles per hour, the lane warranted. So
for a left turn.
Yep.
Okay.
Right turn. It's not warranted. So
left turn was my bigger concern of the two, just because of mobility and having nowhere to go. So
with 50 it's warranted, 40 it's not. So 45 where because it changes back to 55 right in that area somewhere, right